Hey everyone, this is the first episode of the Shane and Friends podcast. I recorded this with my good friend Talya. She'll introduce herself as the podcast gets started, but I wanted to start with some brief introductions. I did this podcast with a handheld mic, and I gave her my good mic that I usually use, and so sometimes the audio seems kind of finicky and funny, and I also did it without headphones on, so I didn't hear how well I was speaking into the mic, so sometimes her mic picks me up and it sounds quiet and stuff, but this is my first time doing it. I imagine I'll do more with her and other people in the future. This was originally recorded from my other podcast called the Trying to See Me As He Do podcast, but I think this would be more fun for me. And I've always talked about having friends on, and I think it's better to leave that podcast more as like my thoughts, my voice notes, and my traumas and struggles. And that'll show up here too, but this will be more of me conversating with friends and doing stuff that I really, really love. So just know those things as we go into it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and yeah, enjoy.
Okay. I think we're going. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me. This is so hold on. No, it's fine. It's fine. I should turn these down slightly. But what's funny is you're the first guest I've had.
Oh, lovely though.
So that's why I'm gonna turn you up. You're on 2.
Well, I do feel honored.
You feel honored?
I feel honored. I'm the first guest.
You should feel honored.
I should. Why wouldn't I?
But yeah, so welcome everybody to the Trying to See Me Like You Do podcast. I have my first guest today. It's my friend Talya. Say hi.
Hi.
Oh, you're cool.
Hi. Hi, good. Is Talya ever good?
Yeah, Talya's. Yeah, are you? Is Talya
I am.
good?
She's good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the goal of today's podcast is I usually do podcasts about, and I've told you this before, typically about like self-reflection, self-awareness, being in touch with how I was feeling throughout the last week and stuff. And you had brought something to my attention, which was the whole, we were both in the hardcore scene, different sides of the hardcore scene, but both in it. And kind of, we vaguely had a small conversation the other day about it, but like our experiences and our differences. So I guess we're just going to like try and redo that conversation, but
Maybe a little more in depth.
yeah. We don't got a time frame. I'm chilling. So worst comes to worst, the audio quality sucks, and I'm like, oh shoot, we got to redo that. So, but yeah. So, I guess, do you want to introduce yourself at all? Like
I do like a little bio, an icebreaker.
Who is Talya? Let's hear that.
You know, I was actually thinking about this earlier, and I was like, there's really only like 5 people outside of my family who really know who I am. I mean, you're definitely one of them. We've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
We're pretty close. But like, I definitely, I thought it was really interesting because like, I was like, a lot of people really don't know who I am, which I
What
thought
do you
was
mean like in
interesting.
like a sense of like just
like knowing, like they know my name, but like people who actually know me and know my like character and my like my soul, it's really not that many people. But I mean, I like on a day-to-day basis, who am I? It's a little bit lighter. A little bit lighter. I'm 28. I live at home. Love that. No, seriously, I'm very thankful I live at home. I have a great relationship with my family, which I love. I have a Chihuahua who's a rescue who hates everything, which I also love. I love that for him.
I love that for him too.
I work as basically a receptionist, kind of figuring out what I want to do with life. Yeah, that's like a day-to-day basis, Talya, though.
So, yeah. So, you're 28 now. I'm 25. I'll be 26 at the end of the year. Are you turning 29 this year?
I just turned 28.
You just turned 28.
Just turned 28, yeah.
So, how long ago were you, or how old were you when you got into the hardcore scene?
I was 18. So, it's been a hot minute. It's been a minute.
I feel like, hold on, before we continue, I should probably specify, because I don't know if I've talked much about being in a band and stuff on the podcast. So, I was in a band for a sec, guys, and then also, when we say hardcore scene, we're talking about, like, hardcore punk, beatdown hardcore, just, like, the culture of the music genre.
Yeah, sometimes you have to specify, because people do not understand.
If I'm like, I'm a hardcore kid, they're like, all right, kid, I can beat you up. Like, no, bro, like... You know what's crazy? I was on there's an app that I use, like, to debate, like, people.
You would.
Yeah.
That's very you.
Yeah. And so But what's funny is I like was changing my bio the other day, and I was like, okay, metalhead, hardcore kid, hip hop kid, and it wouldn't let me put hardcore kid because it associated the word hardcore with like trigger warning, with like sexual content.
Oh, that makes sense.
So it was like hardcore kid. What is wrong with you? And I'm like, no. Like, I'm a hardcore kid, but. I also think it's funny that that's like the title because the genre is still relatively new, like started like the 80s, but it's funny to me because like, when do I stop being a hardcore kid and be a hardcore adult?
No one's a hardcore. Everyone considers himself a hardcore kid.
They're a hardcore
all of
kid.
them.
They're all children. Anyways, no jokes. I still love hardcore and I love hardcore culture, but just not. Yeah. So you got into hardcore when you were like 18.
I did. Yeah.
You vaguely told me how you got into it. Or you gave me a pretty comprehensive story. Can you tell me what it was again? I'm trying to remember.
Yes. So there was a girl on Tumblr who was like kind of Tumblr famous. I mean, like to an extent. I still follow her on Instagram. I like never talked to her too much, but I just remember people told me that I looked like her. This was before my nose jobs though, so but we might still kind of look alike. Oh. And I also just like thought she was really cool. And she said that she really liked a band called Suicidal Tendencies. And so I asked her.
Shout out the Tendency.
Well. And I asked her what song I should listen to by them, and she said Nobody Here. So I listened to them. I think that's off of Art of Rebellion. Okay. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is like, yep. I love this.
This is my identity for the next 5 years.
Yep. And I was so hyper fixated on it, and I used this website called Taste Dive where you can put in like, I still use it.
You said this. I'm gonna have to look into this after the podcast. Like, I really want to see what's on Taste Dive.
It's great. Like, you can put in a movie that you like, and it'll give you recommendations.
Really?
It's great. Yeah. I'll have to look into it. I found a lot of stuff that I like through them, but I remember the next band that I listened to, and I still love them, is DRI, Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, and I don't really listen to them anymore, but I do. I love Spike Cassidy. He's a great person. He's like a really kind soul. But I really only listen to old school stuff. I don't really know any new bands, but I was like listening to some punk. I mean, I still love Social Distortion. I don't really consider them punk. I consider them more of almost like Southern rock or like rockabilly, I guess. Yeah. But I'm trying to think like, I guess, like crossover bands.
Crossover thrash bands.
Yeah. And just thrash in general. I was really into thrash. And then I started getting more into like bands like Cro-Mags, Propane. I liked, you made a face?
No, I just burped. I was like burping.
Oh, I thought you made a face. Like Warzone, like all of like the old school classic hardcore I was really into.
And this is kind of what we mean by being on like different sides of it, is like I got into the old bands insofar as I was into the history, but I didn't really listen to them. I knew who Suicidal Tendencies was in high school, actually. Really? It's funny you said, so I kind of give a backstory of how I got into hardcore by how I got into metal. So I became a Christian when I was in 8th grade, and it was through Christian hip hop. And I remember going to school. I got saved on like a Saturday. And I remember going to school and being like, I'm a Christian now. And I was friends with a lot of like nerdy white metalheads. And it never clicked. And I didn't know all of them were like atheist.
Really?
And I just like, because it didn't come up. I didn't care. Like I was a kid who was raised religious but didn't care. And then I became Christian and was like, dude, I'm so like, this thing changed my life. My life's changed. And they're all like, bro, frick God, man. And I'm like, all right. But yeah, so they were, by the time we were going into 9th grade, I was thinking about like, well, I got saved by Christian rap, so maybe there's Christian metal. And so then I started finding bands, like a lot of like metalcore bands. There were a lot more, I think, like older Christian bands. But there was, in the early 2000s, there was a lot of Christian metalcore bands. So I was like gravitating towards bands because they sounded new. They had this melodic kind of vibe to them. It reminded me of Linkin Park, and I grew up on Linkin Park. So I was like, oh, dude, yeah, this thing's sick, bro. Bands like, I still love today, bands like War of Ages. I think you would like War of Ages. Really? Every time, they're metalcore, so I don't think you would like listening to them. Yeah. But every time I take a person to see War of Ages, they're like, that's one of the best bands I've ever seen. And it's because they are metalcore, but they have this almost old school thrash look to them, and they have a really good melodic vibe to them. I think everybody's like, oh, this is heavy, but it's funky and it's groovy. It's really good. So, but it was bands like War of Ages, and then I was really obsessed with like Memphis Mayfire, Beartooth, and so those are all like Warped Tour metalcore bands.
Yeah. Especially
in like 2014, 2013, which is when I was a freshman. I'm a baby.
I graduated in 2015.
So yeah, I was just going into would have started my sophomore year when you graduated.
It's interesting. So it was almost a little bit of like around the same time that we kind of got into metal.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So being in high school is how I was in all these Warped Tour bands, and then I tried kicking with my metalhead friends and being like, oh, I'm into metal, and then of course the elitist moment happened where they were like, that's not real metal. That's that whiny crap on the radio. You got to listen to Metallica and Anthrax and Slayer. And if you're not a real metalhead. I was like, okay. So I started listening to that stuff, and I wasn't that into it, like to thrash at all. There's some thrash songs I really, really love. Like Battery by Metallica is, I think, one of the best songs ever written.
I never really listened to a lot of Metallica. I'm not going to lie. I used to listen to a lot of Exodus.
Exodus is amazing.
Bonded by Blood was an album that I played on repeat.
Have you ever heard Havoc?
No.
Oh, you should listen to some Havoc. I don't know. Actually, hold on. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
I don't know enough about Havoc as a band to be like supporting them or putting them out there like that.
Oh, you know what? Melodic death metal-ish kind of band I used to listen to, which is like they're kind of weird.
Who?
Iced Earth.
Iced Earth? Isn't there? Wait.
Yeah.
Their vocalist, I'm pretty sure, was a part of the Jan 6 riots.
I think so. Yeah, I was gonna say I think he might be in jail, and I was like, it was for something weird.
I think he's out now, but I think he was in jail for the Jan 6 riots.
He was, before that happened, I liked them. I remember.
I always get them confused, and it doesn't make sense. I get bands confused whose names don't sound alike at all.
That's fair.
But for some reason, my brain just conflates them, so I get Ice Earth and Sacred Reich mixed up.
That's really a big.
It doesn't make any sense. But I've seen Sacred
funny.
Reich, and I saw Sacred Reich with Toxic Holocaust and Gwar.
What's so funny to me is I feel like they're. Gwar is fucking weird, but like the other two, I think they might have some like anti-Semitic roots.
Sacred Reich, I think. Maybe does probably.
Yeah. Maybe does probably.
I just know they
I
were
wouldn't be surprised.
When I have a buddy who's really obsessed with Gwar, and so when we went and saw them, Sacred Reich was like, well, Sacred Reich and Toxic Holocaust are like terrible names. I guess.
Yeah,
so
but it's like
if you're like a Semitic or Jewish person, it's probably not the bands you want to be listening to.
Yeah.
But Sacred Reich was just the chuggiest of them all.
Yeah.
And I was like a metalcore kid. I was like, oh, dude, this is like heavier and groovier. So I don't really listen to those bands outside of that. But shout out to them. Hope you're not anti-Semitic. Hope you're not.
Everyone. Hope you're not anti-Semitic.
Please just don't be racist. You know,
just don't.
We'll be good. Yes, you know. But yeah, so anyways, I got into metal, got into some like more traditional stuff, and then I joined my band, and I had actually heard about hardcore earlier, and everything I had heard from it, I hated.
Yeah, that's fair.
But all I had heard was Knocked Loose and Turnstile. It's funny because I love
Knocked Loose. You were there, right, when we met them? Oh, that was... When they were like not that famous... I was with Scott, and we went to a Knocked Loose show.
At Sanctuary?
Yeah.
Okay, so no.
You were not there. Okay.
I was not. So they were just starting to blow up at that point, and they had like two, like it was one of the sold-out shows. Yeah. So I think I had bought tickets to that show, and then I went to Kubla Khan not too long before and got super scared because I was like, this was mad violent. I can't do that.
It was. Yeah, it was violent.
I was so scared. I was like, I'm not going.
It was violent at there. Okay.
At there.
At there.
It was violent at there. But no, so I was going to Self-Help Fest in 2017, and I was like, oh, snap, Wage War's playing, Denzel Curry's going to be rapping, Asking Alexandria is playing, this is going to be fun. And then Knocked Loose is on the bill, and my buddy Austin was like, bro, this Knocked Loose band is going to be crazy. And he played me Billy No Mates, which is like, if you watch the video, it's the song right before they play Counting Worms. Have you heard Counting Worms?
I don't know. I can't name a single.
It's the big one that got big on TikTok. You probably heard it. It's the one where he barks.
I have not.
Arf, arf. Oh,
I have not.
So I have to show you that after
Do you remember the ASAP Rocky song where he barks?
Yeah. Okay, I don't know what's up with people barking in music. I mean, I guess DMX did it, so it's okay. But yeah, so he had played it for me, and I just hated his voice like being so high pitched and stuff like that.
It is very high pitched.
So then we went to, which is funny because I love it now. Like I love Knock Loose now. But I have a Knock Loose vinyl over in my vinyl thing. But we went to Self Help Fest. One of the openers was a band I love now, but I didn't know them at the time, and I was kind of dogging on them. It was Turnstile. And I heard it, and I'm like, bro, what is this old dad rocky sounding thrash crap, bro? Where's the chugs, bro? Where's the breakdowns? I was so cringe. And then Knock Loose came on, and first song in, my buddy Austin and I went with broke his arm.
Oh.
Fractured it. And I'm trying to rush him to the medical tent, and he's over here trying to get footage
I'm not surprised
of the
by
band.
that
And
at
I'm
all.
like, we gotta go. He's like, just let me get this video, then we can go.
Just
bro.
one 15-second video, man. Just one.
But anyways, so then I was in my band and just started listening to a lot more like newer hardcore bands, metallic hardcore, Orthodox, Kublai Khan, Vane FM, Knock Loose. I'm trying to think of a bunch of them. And I was just like, oh, I'm hooked. Especially after I'd like been to like when I went to that Kublai Khan show. I'm like, bro, we going wild in the pit. When I staged over the first time, I forgot everything else in the world existed. I was like, we can jump off this thing? That's amazing. So
I would have loved to see that, actually.
I've done it quite a few times.
I have never.
Whoa.
I have
going
never.
to hardcore shows and not stage diving?
I was
Granted, you're a
afraid of the... I never got near the pit because I'm a small woman, and I was afraid. And I also... Because I became friends with a lot of bands, and so I... Not to be a pick-me, but I was backstage for a lot of the shows, which was, I mean, that was a cool experience.
That's what I was gonna say. Was another way that we were different is that I wasn't really in the local scene, but I had more friends amongst the local scene. So it was a lot of younger guys and newer bands, and so we were all like an audience for each other. You were backstage for some like heavy hitters that pioneered the scene.
It was an interesting time in my life, and that was, yeah, I mean. It was like, you know, I look back at it and I'm like, that was cool. But like, there definitely were some bands that it was only because like I was a woman and I was a fan and I was easy to manipulate. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to be sued. Not looking for a lawsuit right now. But there definitely were some people who are horrible people who they see young fans who are women and they're like, this is somebody who, if I VIP them and a couple of friends, maybe something will happen. That was not me. Nothing ever happened. I'll make that clear. But it's not uncommon that it does. I was not a unique case.
Yeah, and that happened in our side of the scene too, with mainly more metalcore bands and stuff like that. There's always been drama with, you know, specifically younger women and stuff like that. And I think it goes to it's rooted in some deeper issues of like insecurity, ego, obsession, and wanting and or needing to be loved. I think I've met a lot of female friends of mine who have been in either the hardcore, metalcore, or just like some like music scene, who have been like so obsessed with like an artist that at least on healthy things, and then an artist take manipulative advantage of that when they probably should have known better. I shouldn't say probably should have. They should have just known better. But that's like internal self-awareness that I think people lack. But I think leads to an interesting thing of like, you're 18, 19-ish, hanging out with these guys who've been playing music since the 80s and 90s, like old dudes.
It was definitely very strange. I mean, this was more, the time that I was like being backstage at shows was more when I was in my very early 20s. There was one band in particular who is like famous. I mean, like they're not, you know, when we talk about hardcore stuff, it's like nobody's actually famous, but they are definitely more well known. And the lead singer and I had a really inappropriate relationship. Was not sexual, but just very inappropriate. And that was like the one band that I was way too close with. But yeah, it was, I mean, like now that I look back, like, yeah, like a guy in his 50s should not be calling a girl who's 21 talking about his marital issues. Like,
yeah, that
should not happen. I was also at a really strange place in my life. I mean, have I never actually been in a normal place in my life? Well, hold on. Enough. Like, I've been in some strange places, but particularly then. But I mean, also I was like, you know, like 21 and trying to figure out my life and who I was and who I wanted to be. So I mean, I kind of felt like I was just more like a girl rather than a woman. Britney Spears, not a girl, not yet a woman. We love her. But
you ever seen you keep reminding me of dumb Family Guy things right now. There's a Family Guy thing. You had said the Strange Places thing. There's a time where Peter and Quagmire start a band, and they sing a song called I Can't Poop in Strange Places. So when you had said, like, I was in a strange place, I was like, strange place. I was thinking in my head. And then you just said the Britney Spears reference. There's a really funny scene.
Do not shit on my girl, Britney.
No, there's just a really funny scene where Joe Swanson is, like, obsessed with her. And so, like, his wife prank calls him and acts like a radio host, and he has to be able to sing the song. In his very off-key voice, he sings it, like, his heart out.
Oh, that would be me.
Hey, you know.
That is me.
It's Britney, you know.
It's Britney, bitch.
Okay. So, I do want to talk about that, though. You're talking about, like, your psyche and being in the hardcore scene. I'm curious how it changed you. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, I think it made me very resentful of humans. And I think it's because I was starting my, like, sort of self-awareness, self-help. I got into hardcore when I was in my band around 2018, 2019. It's like when I really was like, oh, let me get into this. And then the pandemic happened, and I found so many more bands. Me and my band were trying to record our project, and everybody was just trying to figure something out. And as I was learning about new bands and stuff like that, the tribalism left zero room for nuance. And I kind of said this to you before. Nuance is something that's very, very, very important to me. I want to... my emotions and feelings are important, but I want to also view them alongside rationale and work those together, because that's how I find the best me. That's how I think we find the best versions of ourselves. So just how radical it was became a turnoff. And I was like, dang, all these kids who are preaching some sort of tolerance, but I see a lot of young men in these scenes messing up when it comes to, talking to women, engaging with women. I see a lot of them are too radical to have reasonable conversations about, not compromise, but like working together. Everyone becomes an enemy. No one becomes, it's like you're either a hardcore person who's like radically like me, or get out. And it's like, well, there's no room. Yeah, it's for real. Yeah. And that's like, it becomes the me versus you mentality. It's just, that's not fun. So that was an effect it had on me. Was part of me was like, oh, I want to be in this, but I feel like I fully can't because I'm a nuanced person. What was it for you as a young woman, especially with the older guys and the older bands? How were you, like, trying to become the woman in that? We
kind of talked about this the other night. I always felt very out of place because I was a lot of times one of the youngest people at the show. And I mean, there's always like some younger people who are there with like their dad or something. Like you kind of see those people. And at the time I was like bleach blonde, and I love spray tanning. That's something I've always loved. And I would always wear like tiny like biker shorts and a huge shirt, and I just like did not fit in. Yeah. And I felt like there were like some people who definitely were kind of like looking at me like, you need to get out of here. So I never felt like I fit in. I think I'm getting off track though.
No, but I think it's like it's hard to, feel connected to something in the same way that I felt misplaced because I was nuanced. You felt misplaced because you're young, you look different from something you care about, which is the music, but it's hard to just find yourself in that one, which I would argue maybe you probably shouldn't find yourself just so hopefully in one scene, which I think happens to a lot of people, but also just find yourself at all when like there's something you care about, but you're being villainized, you're seen as you're like, you're not one of us because you don't look like us. Do you think that was like, that took a toll to some degree? Was that like affecting you?
I mean, I think the main reason that I left was because I felt like there was so much anti-Semitism. I'm just so proud to be Jewish, and that's something that I will always be proud of, and something I'll never support something that's against that. And I think when I started to see more and more bands, both new and old, that were either had like super anti-Semitic roots or were just showing more anti-Semitism, I was like, this is something I don't want to be a part of. I don't want to have any support for. I think also a lot of it was I just got kind of sick of it.
That's fair.
Like, I think I was just, like, I think part of what really drew me into it was, like, the kind of, like, blue-collar feel of it. I'm somebody, I've never cared about what kind of car, I mean, I don't drive, because neurological disorder, something's wrong with me, we don't know. But if I were to have a car, I mean, like, I would not care if it was, like, super old. I think, like, where you live is just where you live. It's a house, it's shelter. And, like, none of those things have been important to me. And so finding people who also, a lot of them were, like, I don't like to use the word, like, lower class, but, like, if you're talking about class, like, they were not people with a ton of money. So, and especially when, like, I was, like, meeting guys being like, oh, like, it's cool that, like, you don't care about these things, like, and you work, like, a job that's, like, like working as, like, a plumber or something like that. You don't have, like, this, like, finance job. So I thought that was, like, cool that we shared similar mindsets. So that really drew me in, but then there's also still a lot of misogyny in the hardcore scene. That also really turned me off. So I think it was a stage of my life that I think was important to have. It was important to be in, but it's definitely over. I don't go to hardcore shows. I wouldn't go to one unless it was like, if DRI was in town, I would definitely go see them. If Biohazard was in town, Billy's such a cool person. He's really nice. I would go see them. Like, out of support. I would definitely be in the way back, away from the pits. But
we got to get you to stage dive. We got
no.
Come to town, because we about to make this shorty jump off stage.
Absolutely not.
That's a good feeling. Yeah. That's it. I think that's, like, real. The getting bored or getting tired of it to some degree. When my band was playing so often, I could feel myself just not even wanting to go to shows. But every time we went to shows, I would, like, oh, this is awesome, and I'd have a good time. But then, like, I remember the feeling of being like, oh, I have to go play tonight or something, or I have to go see a band tonight. And that kind of, like, it took the fun out of it. When you're doing it so often, and you're going through the same experiences with all of it, and especially because I wasn't really making any, like, impersonal connections there that I kind of hoped I would. Yeah. And it's funny because, like, I think about it now. I've been listening to a lot more hardcore again recently. When we first had this conversation, I wasn't listening, or we first talked about doing this podcast, was not listening to a lot of hardcore. I've been on a rap kick for my whole life, and then definitely these last few years and months and stuff. But something happened, or not something happened, I guess something happened that made me just want to, like, listen to some heavy stuff again, and some, so there's bands I would definitely go see, and I would love to, go back and do shows. And I would really, 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 I've said this to you, I want to start a band. Because I feel like there are kids like me, and maybe even kids like you, who struggle to find themselves in hardcore. And not that they have to. I think that's probably, like, the first thing is, like, let hardcore be a good community, but not your identity.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very big.
Because there are a lot of people who make it their identity. I mean, I made it mine for so long. I made
mine like I'm a kid in a hardcore band, bro. That was me, bro. Like that was I got obsessed with bands, and it wasn't even like I said, I wasn't that deep in the scene. I just wanted to talk about bands all the time, and then get, like, brownie points for being like, you know them, like,
No, definitely.
Or,
I
like,
felt
almost
so
my own
cool.
elitist thing. I was like, you don't know this band, bro. Just like,
I would feel so cool when I would wear a band shirt in public, and an old guy would want to, like, argue with me. I don't even want to say, like,
name
old,
three
like
songs.
Literally, though, like, a middle-aged guy would, like, want to argue with me, and I'd be like, bitch, bring it on.
Yeah.
Like, I just saw them last week in concert. Like, there were times where I thought I was cool, and now I look back and I'm like, that's so embarrassing.
Hot stuff, for real. She's like, I know what I'm doing. But no, yeah, there's an ego, I guess, there, kind of. And I think that's also just, like, this is why I think a lot of young kids gravitate towards it. There's a sense of trying to find yourself. Yeah. I've also noticed that a lot of my metalhead friends and hardcore friends, as they've gotten older, have left the scene or have left the community. And they have more nuances, and they listen to a wider array of music than they did when they were, like, 15, 20, 23. Like things have just grown and changed. And that's awesome. I think it's cool. I think I'm like, let me ask you this question. What does the ideal hardcore community look like for you? Like, well, if you could snap your fingers and hardcore would be a certain way today, and you would be like, okay, that I could go back to. What would it be? What would it look like? Or does that not exist?
I feel like that's pretty. I don't know. I think hardcore is just so unappealing to me right now.
That's fair.
I mean, I think it's something where people actually feel safe and comfortable. We were kind of talking about this where I asked you, I said, you know, like now looking back, or I was at shows and I was with people who I should not have been as being someone Jewish. And I think if they had known that I was Jewish, things might have been different. Which, you know, being Jewish is a very different thing than being black physically. This did not make sense.
No. I get it. I understand what you're trying to say.
And I asked you if you ever like had times where you felt uncomfortable being black in the hardcore scene, because as much as there's like, you know, the two radical ends of both the old school and the new age, new hardcore. And like the new hardcore is like, oh, we're so inclusive, where I was like, gee, like, are there almost people who like want to get brownie points by like being like crazy? Friends with the black hardcore kid?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot more, and I think the part that, and like I said, I didn't get close enough, I think, to really have the issue, but I do think there are spaces. There's a band called Move. I think it's Move. Probably shouldn't have said the band name, but whatever.
It's fine, you can bleep it out. Name.
No, I don't care. There's a band called Move, and Move is like, or I can even use one of my favorite bands. Matter of fact, I'll use one of my favorite bands, Unity TX. Unity TX is very pro-black in the hardcore scene. So much so that I think I seen them once, and they said, "If you're not dancing, you're racist." Like,
oh my god!
Yeah, it was a bit much, dude. But I love Unity, but it was a bit much. But I think like beyond those type of people or black people trying to curate space, who I think to some degree maybe are like a little more eccentric or radicalized to some degree. Still, it's like very like left leaning politically, idealization, stuff like that. I think that beyond those people, when I think of just like white people in the hardcore scene, that's not their first thought, but I do worry that there is like a sense of unconscious racism there. But I don't know how prevalent it is now, because I think hardcore it's changing. I think bands like Peeling Flesh, which has a black vocalist, I've seen videos of their performances, and a lot of younger black guys out there with dreadlocks listening to this slam band that's like really heavy, got kids jumping on stage. It's making the difference. So I commend people for it. I don't know. The racism is like, or not just racism, but like, no, I guess just racism. The English is like, where is the nuance allowed? And it seems like, okay, we're seeing a lot more black faces. You know, we're not just saying bad brains. Right. We're saying like, oh, there's, you know, Move, Unity, Peeling Flesh, which isn't really a hardcore band, but they're a beat down band. Or there was a band that got popular for a while on TikTok called Kind Eyes. All black vocalists or black members. There was a band I loved called Rot, but they lost their vocalist. I hope it was not for anything bad. I'm praying to God above. He's alive. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I say lost. I mean, he left the band, but I can never tell if people. There's another band that I loved called why am I blanking on that band's name? They have an album called Pressure. They don't know who I'm talking about. They had a black vocalist, but he left. Same with Rod. Oh, Jesus Piece. Jesus Piece is one of the biggest bands in the scene right now.
I've heard of them, actually.
They're fire. As much as I dislike the name because I'm a Christian.
Right.
But Jesus Piece is pretty fire. But yeah, like I think in the next 20 years, I'm praying that a lot of that unconscious racism that still exists in the scene will hopefully be removed. And I think that for more just everybody, because it's just so radicalized. So.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like with a lot of, I mean, there were a lot of bands that, like old school bands, who call themselves skinheads, which, I mean, I don't know a ton about skinhead culture, but I do know for the most part they did not like black people or Jews.
That was so weird. I feel like I gotta look into the history of like the changing or meaning of the word or whatever, because like Agnostic Front calls themselves a skinhead band.
Yeah.
But I don't think of like racist when I think of Agnostic Front.
I don't know. It's kind of hard. I really love Todd Youth because he had a huge switch. He became Hare Krishna, which a lot of them do. When like I know a lot of these guys who are Hare Krishnas from the hardcore scene, like they're like they become like peace activists. Like it's very interesting. And rest in peace to him. He actually then created the Chelsea Smiles, one of my favorite bands ever. I love the Chelsea Smiles so much. And he got away from kind of from the hardcore scene. He made this other, what band was it? Like Blood something?
I have no idea.
Oh shoot, I forget what it was. It was with John Joseph.
Okay.
Anyways, point being, I could never really tell with Agnostic Front. I know they use the Iron Cross, but then again, like there's
there's such an aesthetic about that in the hardcore, or not just hard. I would say metal altogether. There's something. I guess it just like looks tough and militant.
It's weird because when we were talking about it, I thought Independent, the skateboard company, they also use the Iron Cross, and I know that it's very similar to like the Celtic cross. So like I don't know if there was like something kind of
maybe there's a history beyond the Iron Cross, but from before it was the Iron Cross. But when I think of bands using the Iron Cross, I mainly just think of like, oh, this is like we mean business.
Like don't mess with us.
We're a tough band. We're hard. We're heavy. Granted, I'm probably the worst person to ask. That's how I think of most bands from the 80s and 90s. Just like, yeah. But maybe I might be that's
some of them.
That's my core kid speaking. That's my 2000s scene queen core kid energy
scene
speaking.
Queen.
Yep.
I was a scene queen for a little bit.
Everyone has to be.
If
you're an alternative music girl,
you've got to be a scene queen diva.
/ Tear and My Chemical Romance and Depression.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it happens.
My Chem.
Start playing the first note from Welcome to the Black Parade and just cry.
So I never actually was super into them, I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
My favorite band was when I was in the scene, when I was a scene queen.
You were scene queen?
Was Bullet for My Valentine.
Oh, that's so much worse.
I know. I know, believe me, I know.
Great band though, great band. Shout out Bullet for My Valentine. I'd love to get my band to tour with you.
Shout out to them.
Love to get my band to tour with you. Yeah. I think they're going on tour right now. Or no, that's another band I get mixed up. This also doesn't make sense. Them and Parkway Drive.
I thought you were going to say My Bloody Valentine, and I would be like, that would make sense.
No, but I also get my Bullet for My Valentine mixed up with Blood on the Dance Floor.
Oh, I had a Blood on the Dance Floor stage also when I was like in 8th grade, I think.
Never mind. That's worse. I'll say
there's
that.
Nothing worse than that, I don't think.
I'll stand on that till day I die. If you lay Blood on the Dance Floor.
Did you know
my prayers.
Amy Can Fly?
No, what's that?
They were a scene queen band. I loved them.
Have you ever heard the band? I just love saying scene band names. You ever heard I Wrestled a Bear Once?
Yes.
Do you know who
it's all one word.
Do you know who their vocalist is?
No. Who was that?
So they had a different vocalist, but their second vocalist, I think it was their second vocalist, Courtney LaPlante. She's a vocalist now for that band Spirit Box. You've heard of Spirit Box? Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's strange.
Shorty didn't change.
I don't know how I feel about that.
She changed up on them. Have you ever heard I Set My Friends on Fire?
No.
They're the hardcore.
Wait.
They're the hardcore band with the Soulja Boy cover.
Maybe I was gonna say. Wait a minute. That sounds a little familiar. I don't want to say 100%, but maybe.
For those in the like metalcore scene, like do you know about Punk Goes Crunk?
No, but I kind of want to.
I'll show you after the podcast. Just if everyone listening, go look up Devil Wears Prada cover of Still Fly.
Well,
the internet is wild. I think it's Devil Wears Prada. I could think so, but all right. Well, I think it's cool. We can wrap it up here. We talked about a lot. I think where I kind of want to end is like what I had said earlier. I have a buddy that I work with, and he asked me the other day. Or I used to go up to him all the time because he told me he was in hardcore and going to shows. Or he used to go to shows and stuff. And I used to go up to him all the time and talk to him about bands and stuff like that. And he would just tell me, he's like, no, I'm not really in the scene right now and stuff. And he had saw me like not too long ago. He was like, so you still going to shows and stuff? And I looked at him like, nah, bro, it just got too kind of toxic.
Yeah, it's definitely toxic. I was going to ask you, what was the last concert you've been to?
Like a hardcore show?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be a difficult one. I saw my buddy's band, but if we're not counting like local bands, I seen probably Gideon, and they're pretty big. No, they're not big. They're like 200,000 monthly listeners, and that was last year. That was when I just went to a show. Who did I just see? So Tomas. I just went. They're not really a hardcore band, but I think it was Victims, and that was only because he bought my ticket. Yeah, I'm to be fair, I'm trying to go to more shows, just not. I would like to go to local ones too to get back in the local scene. But that's only because I want to start a band, and I do like have love for the scene. But I also think I'm self-aware now to not be tainted by it.
Yeah.
You know, like I could never go back to the scene and be like, hey, let's do this all again. Like, right. No. I love it insofar as I love playing the music. I like writing the music, and I like seeing bands that do it too. But I really just want to see bands now that I love. I don't really know if I have a desire to be like, let's just hit a show every weekend.
Which I used to be like one of those people who would go to those random local shows where you pay like $5 and it's like a bajillion random bands.
And I get why those are fun. Those are fun because especially if you're in the scene, like you're hanging out with your friends all day, you're watching shows and you know, bands play, you're jumping off stages, you're in pits, you're banging your head, having a grand old time. But I just don't want to get sucked into the ego of it all. And like I said, that nuance is very important to me. So what I was gonna say was my buddy when I told him like it's just too toxic, he looked at me. He said that's exactly why I stopped going.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And you know that made a lot of sense to me. He had said he had an issue with him, his girlfriend, and some guy friends of his being like rude or mean to her and stuff like that. And he was just like, kind of all the things blowing up in the scene, and then his friends in the scene doing that. He was like, I'm just done. And I'm like, I get it, dude. There's a lot of, I think scenes, not just hardcore scenes, but I'll say most scenes, I think, breed a lack of self-awareness because you get to be content following the crowd. Everyone else is doing it, so like
that's very good insight.
Every band is being misogynistic. We can be misogynistic, yeah. Especially if you're a young kid watching your idols do it. Like you're like, oh, I can be like that, or you know, like everyone is dishing on this guy. I can do it. I remember my buddy went to a show, and I don't think no matter where you stand on the topic, some guy there I think was just accused. Trigger warning, just accused of being like I'll say a P3D, because they say online. I don't know if anybody had any confirmation or anything yet. And the whole crowd turned and stomped him out. And I was like, he's a piece of crap if he is a P3D, and deserves some sense of justice and repercussions and consequences.
Absolutely.
But I think it's like crazy to see like an entire audience like beating somebody. Like the mob mentality you have to curate that. Yeah. Is kind of scary to me.
It's very scary. I think, that people will just kind of go along. And, like there's also there's a lot of idolism within hardcore bands, I feel like.
I think even the fact that the guy potentially was a P3DO says a lot about the hardcore scene in general. The fact that a lot of people get through and do, like, really bad things like that. And a lot of it is, like, justified based on what people have seen.
That just, it's sad that doesn't surprise me, though.
Yeah.
I did want to say one more thing before
please.
we finish it up.
Yeah.
Something I thought that was kind of interesting because Shane and I recently made each other playlists, and I love that. I love when someone makes me a playlist. I love it so much.
I got another one in the chamber for you.
Make as many as you want for me, because sometimes I get sick of my own music. I mean,
please.
The bands that I like. I mean, I love them, but sometimes I'm like, I need something in the rotation. I noticed that you and I both like a lot of like electronic-y kind of music now.
Yeah.
Even if there's more, like, because you still love rap. You actually put me on so much more rap, because I used to like. I was like, oh, I'm rapped out. Like, I'm not really. I'm not really listening to rap anymore because I had a rap stage. But like even like some rap that kind of has like an electronic aspect to it. I thought that was really interesting. You liked a lot. It made me happy. You liked a lot of like Alec Empire.
Alec Empire was cool.
I
thought Metric was super, super cool.
I love Metric.
I think what was interesting about Alec Empire was he reminded me a lot of like industrial things. There's one song, I can't remember which. You have a song in there and he has like a fuzz vocal kind of thing on his voice.
Oh, is it XXVV33?
It might be. And the reason I think I like that one is here's a weird stage. I don't know if I ever told you about this. I had a stage where like the only 4 songs I would listen to was a song called Tree Critter from the Hoodwinked soundtrack. Yeah. Tree Critter, which, have you seen Hoodwinked?
I have not, but I know, like, it's a
There's
movie.
For those who have seen it, they'll know what I'm talking about. There's a scene where the grandma, they find out, I'm not going to spoil it for you. Actually, hold on. You got to watch Hoodwinked. Just know you have to watch Hoodwinked. But yeah, Tree Critter from Hoodwinked. What is the name of that song? This is the beginning of the song. It's from Scott Pilgrim.
I have not seen that movie.
What? That's the best movie of all time.
Sorry.
All right. We got some catching up to do. But it was like songs like those, and it's because they're all fuzz vocals. Like I love songs with that like oldie rock feel, and then Alex Empire reminded me of like an industrial version of that, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting.
That's actually how I found him. Was I was listening to some Skinny Puppy, and I do like some industrial music, but I do find it sometimes a little difficult to listen to.
Agreed.
And I was looking for something that was kind of electronic, kind of ambient, kind of industrial, and I found this playlist. And he and Nick Endo, who I also love her, they were on it, and I was like, "This is really cool." I like that he had a really, he has a really eclectic sound that's within the same genre, which I thought was cool. And I've actually started listening to some of their stuff that's a little bit more power electronic almost, which is really weird for me because I never thought I was going to be like listening to something that's like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he's really cool. So yeah, I was like, yeah, you and I like the same song.
Do you think you didn't have much? You had rock in there, but you didn't have like a lot of like things closing to hardcore in your playlist. I think I had like 2 songs that were in mine. I think.
I mean, I still listen to like classic rock. Guns N' Roses was like the first rock band that I really liked. Yeah.
I can't say anything. I'm on a public forum. I like Guns N' Roses. All right, there we go.
Yep. They were the first ones, and I really like.
Isn't that band with Slash?
Wait, what?
Isn't Slash in that band?
Yeah, he's like the guitarist.
And Axl Rose.
Axl Rose, the lead.
Okay. Yeah, those guys.
those gentlemen.
I know their names.
Those gentlemen. I like classic rock. My dad's favorite band is called Jethro Tull, and they're kind of 60s, kind of almost like, I don't want to say they're like the Beatles, but they're like they were within that era, and they're like kind of classic.
Rocky almost.
Almost, yeah. And I really like them. They have a few songs that I like. Spirit, which is another kind of in that era. My dad has great music taste. And so yeah, there's still like classic rock that I like. I still like a lot of rockabilly. You
even said that earlier. I do not like a lot of rockabilly. I hate rockabilly. I ain't gonna lie.
I love it. I love it. The Del Fuegos.
Fuegos?
Please forgive me. I can barely speak the English language.
Is it Spanish?
Yes.
Del Fuego. Yeah.
Thank you.
Or, I'll see if I can do it right. Hold on. I'm half Mexican, guys. Trust me. Hold on. Nope. Fuego.
They're a bunch of white guys, so you know what?
You know what? Del Fuego.
Del Fuego.
Yep,
Free Shabakadoo.
Free Shabakadoo, guys.
Free Shabakadoo. I can barely speak English, so it's fine.
Good. But you were saying, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. You were saying something. Do you remember what you were saying?
Oh, no. Honestly, I love that we have these conversations where you and I both, we were just like, what were we talking about half the time?
It makes it so it's so much better. I think it makes it like more, it shows how bad our ADHD is.
We're on the same like wavelength though. Yeah, we're on the same wavelength, which I like.
All right, Talya, where can the people find you at if you want them to find you? If you don't want them to find you, tell them to leave you alone.
I prefer, right now, my Instagram is under construction. That's what it has in the bio.
Girl.
He just gave me a look.
I did.
But if you want to follow it, Is It Really Tall? I do have public writing, which I have 2 blogs. One of them is talyaswriting.wordpress.com. Those are my short stories. I have 2 new ones that might be out there. I might self-publish one of them, but if you like short stories, you might like it. The other one is kind of a mental health blog. I actually just made a new post on it for the first time in a few years. That was kind of interesting to me even because it had a lot of self-reflection. That blog is itstalyaslife.wordpress.com. But that's all my public social media.
Yeah. All right. And then I say a lot of weird personal stuff on here, so I'm not going to tell you guys mine. So yeah, dude, it's so crazy because you're probably going to send this to your friends, hopefully.
I'll put it on my Instagram story.
Yeah. Just don't tag me.
Why? Why can't I tag
Girl,
you?
because once you listen to this podcast, or this podcast is a great one. Listen back to my other ones. I'm going to say some weird stuff. You're going to look at Shane differently.
I might need to hear that.
Well, they're short episodes, so I'll send you the link. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we are out.